The country club restaurant was humming with the typical quiet buzz of idle conversation. It was summer, so the outdoor tables were fully occupied. A light breeze wafted through the neighborhood, mixing the salty smell of the ocean with the pleasant flavors of the local cuisine. Upstairs, the melodious sounds of birdsong mingled with the trill of insects. It was the true soundtrack of summer. This July day was very hot, but a light breeze made the air quite comfortable. The view of the beach was beautiful. It was the serene tapestry of summer. Among the regulars at the restaurant were 3 women, each about 30 years old. They were very nicely dressed in stylish and sexy summer clothes, sleeveless sundresses that showed a hint of cleavage, but nothing revealing. Groomed hands and pedicured toes that showed off flip-flops and sandals, carefully applied makeup that was almost invisible. But most importantly, gold stripes on that certain fingers of the left hands. These ladies met here at least twice a month. It was an outlet from their daily duties of being wives and mothers. It was their time, not time devoted to soccer practice, homework, making dinner, and other tasks expected of young wives of successful men. They always came here to let their hair down. Figuratively speaking, of course, they would never leave the house with their hair down, and enjoy good food, good friends, and idle chatter. In other words, gossip. There were 2 people missing from this group today. The ladies present, Carol, Suzanne, Layla, were sipping white wine and waiting for the food to arrive. "Has anyone heard from Gina? She was supposed to meet us here, wasn't she?" Suzanne asked, looking around the restaurant. Carol nodded. "She sent me a text earlier, said she was running late. John, her husband, caught some kind of illness. She was making him chicken soup, you can imagine. You know how men get sick when they catch a cold. The whole world stops. Gosh, men can be such babies. They have a sore throat and they want you to cuddle their arms and legs. Last month I had chills, fever, and runny nose. I still managed to take Tracy to cheerleading practice, Kenny to karate class, clean the house, and make dinner. When I was finally able to go to bed, Mark had the nerve to wake me up and ask me to have some fun. I swear they want you to be a combination of their mother and their sex slave. Every once in a while I want to tell him to go fuck his mother," Layla said with a smirk. The other 2 women opened their mouths wide in surprise at their friend's boldness. "Layla!" they shouted in unison. Layla smiled casually and ate a grape from her fruit plate. "Speaking of men," Carol's voice lowered. The way women do when they want you to know what they're about to say is so important. She tilted her head forward. "Have you heard about what's going on with Jen?" "Yes, I talked to Gina yesterday." Layla's eyes widened, and she also lowered her voice to just above a whisper, demonstrating that what she had to say was just as, or even more, important. "Gina said something about Jen and Dave's divorce, but didn't go into details. I asked her for the details. Believe me, I asked. But I got the feeling she wished we hadn't brought it up." Suzanne's voice practically squealed. "Oh my God, is that why Jen is so sad? I ran into her the other day when she was dropping the kids off at school. She looked like she hadn't slept in ages. She was a mess. Oh my God, Suzanne, stop it!" Layla exclaimed, clapping Suzanne on the shoulder. Suzanne looked at her wide-eyed as she spoke again. "No, it's true. Her hair was braided into some kind of ratty bun and she was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. She wasn't even wearing a bra." "That's awful," Carol said, her tone sounding somewhere between shock and amusement. All 3 women were saddened by their friend, but at the same time fascinated. This was news. Big news. Huge news. They had known each other for years, even lived in the same neighborhood. Their children always played together. Over the years, they exchanged recipes, complained about their husbands, and shared secrets. They thought they knew everything about each other. Getting such important information that was previously unknown guaranteed that their interests would peak. Carol: "So, tell us everything, Layla. Did Gina say anything else about Jen? She must have said something." Layla: "Well, after Gina mentioned it, she suddenly went silent. I asked what happened, and she told me that Jen and Dave were having some problems. I asked what happened, and she told me that it was bad and they would probably get divorced. That's all she said. Then she said, 'It's time,' and hung up." Suzanne: "What? Oh my God, she must be devastated. How long have she and Dave been married?" 6 years? 7? They haven't even lived a decade yet. Is he just going to divorce her and leave her with 2 kids? That bastard, I never liked him. The conversation was put on hold as the main courses were served. The waitress smiled pleasantly as she placed the dishes in front of them. "This smells wonderful," said Carol, tucking her napkin into the neckline of her dress. With her fork, she stirred the chicken into the sauce that coated the meat, cut off a small piece and put it in her mouth. A smile appeared on her lips as she savored. Once the waitress made sure they were satisfied with their meal, she filled their glasses again. With that done, she smiled pleasantly and left the ladies to enjoy their meal. "I know I shouldn't eat pasta, but linguine is my weakness. I always have to spend an extra 30 minutes at the gym after I'm full," said a self-deprecating Layla as she spooned the noodles onto her fork. "Layla, are you kidding me? You have such a waistline. I'm the one who should be eating nothing but salad. I'd blow up like a balloon if I ate all those carbs," Suzanne exclaimed, looking at her salad with a pretend pouty lip. Yeah, you inflate like a balloon and it flies right to your breasts. Are you a size D yet? Steve only wishes I had stuffed my bra like you," Carol said playfully. All 3 of them laughed. They paused their conversation for a few minutes during their meal. Carol was the first to break the silence. "You know, girls, do you think Dave—" She looked around, then leaned forward and lowered her voice, again demonstrating how critical what she said was. "Cheating on Jen?" Layla. "I wouldn't be surprised, but why do you ask?" Carol. "About a month ago, Dave asked me to watch the boys. He didn't explain why. I told him I would, and when I looked out my window, I saw him getting into a car with a woman. Some skinny red-haired girl. They drove off together." "You're kidding!" Suzanne awed, covering her mouth. Carol just nodded, taking another sip of wine. Layla blinked as a thought occurred to her, something she had noticed, but had hesitated because it didn't seem important at the time. But with this new revelation, she felt compelled to share. Layla. "Come to think of it, I did see something interesting." "What?" asked the other 2 in complete unity. Layla. "One night, a few weeks ago, I was taking out the trash. I saw a strange car parked in front of Jen and Dave's house. Moments later, Dave got out of the passenger seat. He was on his way to the house, but someone yelled his name from the car. It was a woman's voice. He walked over to the driver's side and leaned forward. You know, like he kissed somebody. Then he walked into his house. I'll bet you my last dollar it was that fool you saw, Carol." "God damn you!" Suzanne cried, covering her mouth with both hands. "Right outside his house. That's disgusting. What if the kids saw?" Layla shook her head. "You know what these men are like? They don't care. They dip their wick into anything that moves. It doesn't matter who's around." "But why did he cheat on Jen? I mean, she's beautiful. She's knockout attractive. I'm not a lesbian, but if I played for that team, I would have fingered her within a second of meeting her," said Carol. Everyone had to agree. Of the 5 women, Jen was the youngest and the most beautiful. Layla. "It doesn't matter to them. Men are like dogs, always sniffing out a new ass. Pigs. But I'll tell you, if Mark ever cheated on me, I'd star in an episode of Snapped." All 3 of them laughed. When they realized how loud they were, their laughter turned into giggles and giggles. Carol. "Layla, you're crazy." Layla. "You better believe it. And as long as Mark knows it, there won't be any problems." They chatted and laughed about other things while enjoying their food. They told each other about the kids, their husbands' disturbing habits, the latest news from their favorite shows, the crazy presidential race, and all the other things women who dine together talk about. Eventually, the waitress returned to the table to check on them and ask if they wanted anything for dessert or coffee. After much arm-twisting, Carol and Suzanne ordered a slice of cheesecake. Layla felt she had eaten enough carbs along with the linguine, so she just had an espresso. Suzanne. "Layla, you need to live a little on pleasure. I mean, you jog every day. One slice of cheesecake won't hurt you. Speaking of running, have you tried that new bike path they just paved? It's supposed to be paved to the beach." When Suzanne mentioned jogging, Layla's eyes lit up. "Oh my goodness, girls, I just remembered something." The women perked up. Layla bit her lower lip as if trying to decide whether or not to tell what she knew. Last week when I was jogging, I saw a black Nissan drive past me and I thought it was Dave in the passenger seat. There was a woman sitting in the driver's seat, and I remember she was a redhead. I really wasn't paying any attention to it, but now I know it was him with her. That piece of shit. Carol. The black Nissan? That's the car I saw. Suzanne. What were they doing when you saw them, Layla? Layla. I can't tell you, but I'll tell you this. It didn't look like they were strangers. It looks like they knew each other, if you know what I mean. Carol. What? Layla. Aha, like I said, I first saw them when I was running. They passed me as I was coming out of my driveway, and I had been running for about 30 minutes. The same car was parked in front of Jen's house when I finished my run, and they were still inside. Probably one last kiss, or even more than that, right in public. The other women ogged. 30 minutes in a car with a woman who wasn't your wife. Running off with her to who knows where? Probably a motel? Kissing like drunk teenagers in front of the kids. Who does that? Right in front of their own house? It was just too much. Layla. I hope Jen nails this crook's nuts to the wall. I wonder if she still has a lawyer. Carol, do divorce attorneys work at Steve's firm? I mean, real assholes. She needs one of those sharks that eat people. Carol. I was already planning on asking him about it tonight. He won't want to get involved, but I can get him to come around. All I have to do is... At that, she ran her tongue along her cheek. The other two girls broke into fits of laughter. Take another one for the team, Carol. That poor girl needs justice, Suzanne said between giggles. Layla was laughing too hard to say anything back. Their company was getting pretty silly, but that was okay. Having fun without me, I see? Came a ringing voice from behind them. Everyone turned around and saw Gina walking leisurely over to the table. It's about time she showed up, Carol said, getting up to hug her friend. The other two waved their hands in greeting. Carol and Gina were best friends. They had known each other since high school. They had been to each other's weddings. Their kids thought they were cousins. Their husbands played golf together and were friendly with each other. These two ladies were the closest of their company. Another noteworthy relationship was Gina and Jen. They were cousins. This was how Jen was introduced to the ladies. She was a few years younger than the others, but it was fitting. Soon she joined their lunch group. I'm sorry I'm late, girls. John is sick. He needed a nurse, plus... She narrowed her eyes and lowered her voice like she was about to reveal a savory secret. She knew the protocol. The other ladies caught on to that and gave her their full attention. I've been on the phone with Jen all night, she said. We were just talking about her. How is she? Layla asked in a sympathetic voice. Gina just shook her head and sighed. The poor girl is a mess. Her marriage has broken up. She doesn't know what she's going to do. Dave came home the other day and dropped the divorce papers in her lap. She's been hysterical ever since. That fucking bastard, Carol said in a venomous voice. Not only had that asshole cheated on her, but he had the nerve to throw her divorce papers? Cheaters need to die, Layla said through clenched teeth. That distracted Gina a little, and she had a look of shock on her face. Then she got a little angry. Layla, you don't know the whole situation. My cousin had her own reasons for doing what she did. What did she do? That poor girl is a victim. Layla returned, a little shaken by her friend's irritation at her. That's what I'm saying. Can you imagine how miserable she must have been to cheat on Dave? To cheat with one of his best friends? It was a cry for help. Gina's voice was excited and filled with emotion. However, the bombshell she had just dropped took a second to send the entire group into shock. Wait a minute, Carol said, trying to comprehend what she had heard. So it was Jen who cheated? Yes, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Wow, was all Carol could say. Of course she cheated. Suzanne squirmed in her chair and leaned forward as she spoke. Dave's dating some red-haired fool in a black Nissan. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. I think you've got it backwards, honey. Carol giggled. Oh, hush. You know what I mean. Men are such hypocrites. He runs around with that bitch and then wants to divorce Jen to get revenge. Gina looked confused for a second, then shook her head. No, you've got it wrong. That woman was the detective he hired to follow Jen. He was meeting with her to gather evidence. Ah. This afternoon, the table went silent for the first time. This information changed everything. It was one thing to deceive a husband. Men are dogs. But for a wife to cheat was a big deal. This already salacious story just got better. It's a shame that for someone they care about, it ruined family life. However, it made what we heard more intriguing. Gina continued to give details. Apparently, Dave became suspicious when he came home and found his best friend's car parked in front of his house. His friend had pretextually waited until Dave got home from work so they could shoot some hoops. Dave bought it the first time. The second time, it was less convincing. After the third, it was just a matter of finding the right detective. When he had all the proof he needed, he went to a divorce attorney and prepared the paperwork. He ordered service on her just the other day. "Oh my goodness, poor girl, what made her do that?" Suzanne said in a sympathetic voice. "Unhappiness, that's what. You know she had to be unhappy to do it. Dave must have really neglected her, maybe even insulted her. Not like hitting her, but verbally. That's as bad as you know. That fucking bastard. She must be devastated," Layla said, her voice filled with emotion. The rest of the group nodded understandingly. Carol pressed her lips together and shook her head. "Dave was always bossy. He was smothering her. I mean, he followed her around? Who does that? No wonder she did what she did." "Well, we need to be there for her. She's going to need a lot of support to get through this difficult time," Suzanne interjected. The others agreed again. "Well, Suzanne," Gina began. "She actually needs a place to stay for a while. You know, to gather her thoughts. You have an extra bedroom in the finished basement, don't you? Maybe she could stay there for a while." At this, Suzanne fell silent. Jen living in her house, with her husband, young, beautiful, and, it had already been proved, and less committed to her marriage vows. Besides, Suzanne didn't know what Paul would think. Jen was her friend and all, but what if Paul thought she looked like Jen? Birds of the same flight and all that. Not to mention what the neighbors would think. If the rumor hadn't spread yet, it probably wouldn't for long. If they found out she was harboring a cheating girlfriend, she could very well find herself embroiled in a scandal. That was simply no good. "She wouldn't be comfortable in this room," Suzanne said quickly. "It's drafty. Plus, right next to the washer and dryer. Poor Jen will never sleep. What about Layla's house?" When her name was mentioned, Layla tensed. Then she smiled and laughed. "Girls, you know how my kids are. Noisy and awful for crying out loud. That poor girl needs some peace. Carol has an au pair room above her garage. It's far enough away from all the noise. She'd probably be more comfortable there." Well, of course. But, you know, we use that room for storage. There's no room in there, and Steve's so busy he won't have time to put it away for her. I couldn't let her in there with that mess. She's been through enough already. But Gina, she's your cousin. Why can't she stay with you?" Gina, who had grabbed Suzanne's wine glass to take a sip, almost spit it out. "Come on, girls. After all, my John is sick. It's just bad timing. The last thing she needs is to catch some kind of virus. But you know what I'm thinking? What if we all just chip in and get her a room? Just until she figures out what to do next. She can relax in peace and quiet. That's what she really needs. We'll visit her to make sure she's okay and give her whatever help we can." "That's the best idea so far. We need to be there for her. After all, she is our friend," Carol said with relief, feeling better. The others agreed. Lunch was almost over. All in all, it had been quite productive. They had found a way to be there for a friend in need without getting caught in the quagmire of associating with her. Isn't that what friends are for? To be there for a friend in a time of need? Well, as long as it didn't cause problems in their lives. I mean, who needs that kind of headache? Carol gestured for the waitress to bring 3 separate checks as the conversation became innocuous. After receiving a check, they each left money in a leather envelope to pay the bill, with a substantial portion left for a tip. Then they gathered their purses and left the restaurant. The sounds of their carefree banter and giggles died away as they dispersed.